So welcome everybody. If you are not connecting from Spain, there is a SIETAR in your country for sure. So there's also a SIETAR Europe, and we are a very diverse group of people who get together for fun things like this, for events and get-togethers and training. And so check us out if you have not checked out SIETAR before. Today we are here because we're going to be talking about fostering inclusive values in the kids in our lives in the LGBTQ+ educational toolkit. It's something that I think probably everybody here is aware of, that things have changed quite a bit over the years, and they're still changing. So perhaps the way that the young people are being introduced to values that are inclusive is very different today from the way that it was in the past. And so it's a very exciting time actually to be in contact with young people, which can be really any age. I think we're never too old to learn. So they can be very young children, they could be a little bit older, could be even like students who are university age. Everybody is always open to learning something new. And if we have those people in our lives, then we can definitely influence them a little bit more. So we're going to begin. I'll introduce myself. Espe, I'm sorry, did you want to do a little introduction? I just kind of launched in. Did you want to do one? I think you're going to do one.
No, go ahead, please. I see you're very comfortable, and since you are also a SIETAR member, it's your turn now.
I'm speaking on behalf of SIETAR as well.
Yes, thank you.
So my name is Brian David George. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I am an interculturalist, and I am a member of SIETAR España. And I am also a member, as you may have guessed by now, of the LGBTQ+ community. And I'm very excited to share some of this information with you today so that you can share it with the people in your lives, especially the younger people in your lives. So basically, we're just going to be talking about, oh, look, we have some more people coming in. Basically, today we're going to be talking about the part that we all play in creating a more inclusive society, especially in the case of the young people in our lives, how we can help them develop more inclusive values, bringing awareness to maybe some of our own challenges and resistance in educating people in DEI, and also to have a few tools to help start some conversations perhaps with those people. So why are we here today? I think it's already been pretty clear, but it's about these little guys and some that are a little older maybe. Oops. So that is basically why we're here. And I want to know pretty much what everyone here's relationship is with these kids or young people. So could you just pop into the chat box what your relationship is to the young people in your lives? Are you a parent or a guardian, an aunt or an uncle? Are you a sibling to maybe some younger people? Are you a grandparent? Are you an older cousin? Are you a friend of folks with kids? Are you a teacher, a professor, a tutor, other? What have we got going on? So I can see aunt, parent to teenagers, sibling, parent, mother and aunt, parent, auntie, mentor, godmother, uncle, friend, older cousin. Good. Yeah, there are many different ways that we relate to younger people in our lives. So everybody here is included in this group of people that can influence and have an impact on younger people. Did I go back? Am I going backwards now? Is anybody, Espe, why am I going backwards? Do you know?
No.
How does that work? What happened? Okay, there we go. So we're going to take a little poll now. I think it's probably safe to, I don't want to use the word assume, I'm going to just have a quick check. Everybody here, I believe, understands that sexual orientation is not a choice. So I'm going to go to like a level 2 question here on this poll. You should have a poll up on your screen. How would you feel if your sexual orientation and or your gender identity were different than it is? So that includes everybody, no matter what your identity and orientation is. How would you feel if it were different? Exactly the same, comfortable, uncomfortable, or you don't know, you've never thought about it? And this is anonymous, so you can say whatever you want to. It's just kind of a temperature on the room to see how how we're doing. Give them just another moment to vote. Okay, Espe, should we share the results of that?
Yeah.
Okay, so 43% of the people say they would feel exactly the same. 43% they would feel comfortable if their orientation or identity were different. Nobody admits to being uncomfortable. I mean, if I were voting, I think that I personally, if I identified as a female in a male body, I might feel a bit uncomfortable at this stage in my life. So just going to be honest about that. And then don't know, never thought about it. There's also that option. So I'm glad to see that we're in a mindset of wanting to learn and to be inclusive. That's very helpful in moving forward in this presentation today and in this little chat, because we're going to have question and answer at the end. So moving on, let's talk about why it's important for us to do this work. Why do the kids need it? Why do the kids in our lives need us to step up our game a little bit? And so I see that we're kind of in that space. If you had to rate yourself from 1 to 10 on how inclusive you are, what would you say? Could you pop that in the chat box as well? How inclusive do you think you are in your values? Okay, I see it. 9, a 7, 7 to 8, 7, 8. 9. Okay. Good. Good. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit now about some stories, because we are human beings and humans understand through stories. So we're going to talk about some stories of some different people that are in this community. And we'll begin with this reflection, which I think is really very interesting when considering inclusive values. What if parenting and in general educating young people became less about telling our children who they should be and more about asking them again and again forever who they already are? This is from the book Untamed by Glennon Doyle. So this is me when I was a little kid, about 2, I think 2.5. And I was always a very, very sensitive child. And basically my story is that it took me quite a while to come to terms with who I am, because my parents didn't know what to do with a very sensitive child. You know, they had no clue. I remember that I wanted to play with Barbie dolls, and they were very uncomfortable about buying me Barbie dolls, and they didn't want to. And then I would get them other ways, and they just didn't really know what to do with that. I remember some of the people that I really enjoyed as like my heroes or heroines. I loved Wonder Woman, and so I would pretend, I would play like I was Wonder Woman in the living room, spinning around and like ripping off the glasses that she used to use. And you know, they didn't know what to do with me. And so I learned very early on that it was not safe to be me. And so I basically hid from myself for many years until I was probably in my late teens. Around 17 is when I couldn't deny what I was feeling anymore. And so for me, it was very subtle. It was never specifically said, you know, you have to be straight, but I was always asked about girlfriends. And if there was a girl in my class that I liked, and did I have a girlfriend? And so I didn't really have that space to discover who I was. And I also noticed that the things that I enjoyed playing with or doing, I remember once I asked for a Madonna album for Christmas. I was raised Christian, so I got a Madonna album. And as we were going to visit some family, my mother told me, "Now you can't tell anybody about the Madonna album." And I was probably 14 or 15 years old. So here I was, you know, a full teenager being told to hide once again from people who loved me, people in the family. I was just, I don't know, I'm not sure, when did you stop hearing what the story was?
We didn't know how you felt.
Yeah.
Oh, right. I didn't. Yeah, I
Madonna album.
Yeah,
and
it was not showing the Madonna album.
Okay, not sure exactly. So it was not safe, basically, to be me. Was the message that I received. And by changing little questions and by changing little attitudes when speaking to the kids and the young people in our lives, we can make those safe spaces that are so important for discovering who we are. So this is not all about me. I also have other people that I hope to be able to share with you. The next one, luckily, is here with us, and I have a lovely little photo of her that I will bring up as soon as Espe, can you share?
I was about to ask you, wait.
Because you also have the presentation. Could you share it? So I'm now going to be asking, there we go, Rocio, who is here with us, to share her story as an LGBTQ child and also as a parent.
Thank you. Well, maybe my experience was a little bit different from yours. I have to say that my parents, although I was a little bit different, I like to play with, guns, that I was a cowboy, or play football. And I had two older brothers, so somehow they didn't seem to think this was, so strange, because I had two older brothers, and that's what they did. So I played with them, football and cowboys, but I was really interested in those things. But my parents never made me feel that any of these things that I would ask them that could be more like boyish or tomboy things, they never said anything about this. So my experience with my parents, although they didn't know, other parents might have suspected things. My parents didn't, although other people around our family did, because the way they talked to me and were open about the fact that I might like women too, and not, being like, giving for granted that I would have a boyfriend or something. But my parents never did. But despite of that, they never told me anything like, this is not for girls, or you shouldn't be playing this, or you shouldn't be doing that. They were happy just seeing that I was happy doing the things I did. Maybe because of my brothers, I don't know. They thought, this is fine. When they found out, they were in a shock, which I was surprised that they were, because I thought I've given plenty of I don't know, signs at times, but they were kind of in a shock. But I was really proud of them, although it took them time to, accept everything, because they made me a very self-confident girl in general. My parents always told me, you can do whatever you want to do. I always came up with crazy ideas about learning languages, traveling to Japan, being sushi chef, I don't know, all kinds of things. And they were always supportive. So I was very self-confident, and that made me also self-confident with my own sexual orientation, and telling them when I was sure that this was the moment to tell them. And I was sure that although they would have a bad time, they would understand and they would love me anyway, because that's the way they have been with me throughout my whole life. And I hope to be able to offer this to my own child that I have with my wife, and to make him feel self-confident, because I'm sure his experience will be very different from mine. In this new generation, it seems like everyone is more open, or at least my nieces and nephews are, but still he will have two mothers. I don't know what that will be like for him, but I hope that he also will be self-confident. I have also realized during this time that after traveling and living abroad several times, that has made me open to other people, and also to understand that you need to you need to accept that there are a lot of people who will never understand you, and that's fine too. You know, we all want everyone to be open and accepting, but that will not happen. You might travel to another country, they might not be open about this, and that's fine too. And you need to be able to be okay with it, because otherwise you will suffer, and not everyone is going to be okay with being gay. Or I was really worried when I lived in Japan. I thought, you know, I've heard so many things, and I lived in a Japanese family for a long time, and many times. I went there 3 times, and I thought they wouldn't understand this, but they knew. And when I told them, they were so happy for me. And so I was really surprised. Sometimes you never know who you think in this culture they will not understand this, so I'm not going to share. I think it's better to be open many times and not to be scared. And if someone does not accept, then that will be fine too. I mean, not everyone is going to be okay with this.
Rocío, can I ask you what age you were when you talked to your parents? Because Brian said teens.
It was quite late. I was not very sure about what I wanted to do or what I would end up doing. So I was like, I think I was 21. And yeah, it was late, but it was because I was sure. I was super sure about what I wanted. And so, although my parents reacted like many other parents, I don't know about George, about Brian's parents, but my mother, the first thing she told me was like, maybe you could go to the psychologist and, you know, fix this. And I'm like, no, you need to go to the psychologist. You know, that's the difference. You need help because you need to accept this, because this is not going to change. But I guess that I think that younger people are they are sharing these things with their parents much earlier now. We have been more careful because our times have been maybe different. But I was really happy to share this with them. And I thought maybe I should have done it earlier, but at the same time, I thought, no, this was the time I was sure, and I knew what to tell them, and I knew I would not step back from what I wanted to do. I was mature enough to face them and tell them, no, I'm not going to the psychologist. You need to go to the psychologist.
And did you actually say that to your mother?
Yeah.
And what did she say?
That was our first conversation about this. And
how did she respond?
She cried, and I was like, no, you will need to go to the psychologist because you need to accept this, and this is your problem, not mine. So she had a really hard time. Yeah, she had a bad time. My father, I don't know, maybe because he's from Sweden, he was upset 1 hour, and then he was like, okay, let's move on. It's okay, you know. I was upset, but I need to, you know, move forward with you. And if this is what you want to do, then just do it. So that was easier.
I actually tend to, and this is really kind of in whatever format we want to give it. So I want to, before we move on, because we do have another testimony, a testimonial to share. That one's recorded though. So if there's anybody else here who would like to share anything, I'm going to open the floor, or for maybe questions, we can hold off on the questions until the end. But if there's anybody else here who wants to, yeah.
Yes, may I ask a question to Rocío?
Yes, of course.
You said you spoke with your parents when you were 21, but I'm curious if you want to share, when did you realize your gender identity was different?
I realized when I was very, very young. I don't even know how young I was. I already knew I was interested in girls, but not necessarily not interested in boys, at least for me. So I was like at the same time interested in both for a long time. I had enough time to experience with boys, and then I thought I would not move on without, really experiencing having a relationship or being with a girl, because that would be not knowing me or not getting to know myself. So when I had the opportunity to have a relationship with another woman, that's when I decided, from these two options, this is what I really want.
Okay, thank you. And another question, did your mom went to the psychologist?
No,
Okay.
because I mean, she's very stubborn, but she spent a year having a really bad time and talking a lot with my brothers and, you know, closer friends. And I told her, you know, I will give you as much time as you need, because she was okay. I mean, we would still have a relationship. We talked, but during that year, she didn't want to meet my partner at that time, which is my wife now, but she didn't want to see her. And I told her, I will give you enough time, but when I consider enough time is enough, you will have to choose. If you want to see me, you will have to face her coming with me. Otherwise, I will not come to, you know, have lunch or dinner with the family. So I gave her that time. And when I thought it's enough, which was a whole year, I made her choose, and she chose to, you know, go ahead and, you know, have both of us for lunch and just move on.
Accepted, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Rocío, how, from your own experience, how are you determined to do certain things differently with your own child?
Oh, it's complicated. I don't know. I guess that anyone who's a parent or will have kids close by, things are so different now. But I am sure that I would like my kid to also see families like our family, to have the opportunity to, you know, I don't want him to think that we are the only, like when he was born, it was COVID time. And then we were by ourselves. So all of a sudden he realized that we were not only 3 people, there were other people in the world. And I don't want this to happen to him with regards to our family. I want him to realize that there are other families like our family, but at the same time, not feel different either. I don't want him to feel different. We are just like anybody else. I've never felt different just because I was with a woman. I felt fortunate because I was in love, not different because I was in love with a woman. And I hope for him to feel safe and not to suffer because of our different family. So, but I hope to give him the tools to be able to adjust and to accept other people not being okay with this idea or telling him things that might hurt, but, you know, like my parents did with me, make him feel self-confident and be able to, you know, navigate whatever things come up. But basically getting him to know other families like our family too. I think that's very important, that he feels that we are not, you know, like COVID times, the only people in the world. There are other people out there.
One of the things that's we're going to be talking about now is that creating a safe space for children to just discover themselves. And I do have a question for Rocío before we move on. Rocío, how would you feel if your son came to you and said, hey, I like that boy in class?
I don't know. I don't know. I guess maybe from my perspective, which is different from younger people, I might be worried. I might worry for him because I know, you know, things that you might be, that, you know, people telling you things or saying things about you, or you might suffer when, you know, when you're gay, depending on who's around you. And I would be worried because I want him to be okay, but definitely, of course, he needs to be whoever he wants to be, and that's not only with his sexual orientation, just in general. Whatever he wants to study, whatever he wants to do, if I can support that, I will. I'm just worried about him feeling okay and being happy. But I really don't know. I might feel worried, like, oh, okay, but be careful, and I don't know.
And this is something that we're going to see. What it's like when a parent creates a space of freedom for their child to discover who they are. So now we're going to listen to a testimony. Espe, if you don't mind sharing the presentation and the sound so that we can hear this one.
Oh, wait, I have to.
And I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm so glad that we have the tech support here to do this.
Okay, so now.
And if you click on that little, yep.
Oh, sorry. Where do I, here, right?
Yep.
So I'm the mother of an almost 12-year-old who came out to me when she was about 10, and she came out and basically said, Mom, I have something to tell you. I think I'm bisexual. And I said, oh, well, that's fine. How do you know? And she explained that she had been looking at different programs and things like that, and that she felt that she probably would be attracted to both men and women. And I said, that's great. So at this point, do you want me to tell anybody? Do you want me to tell your dad? Do you want to tell your dad? And she said, well, no, I can tell him. That's absolutely fine. And so I said, well, how about other people? Who else knows, so that we can talk about, your identity freely with them. And so she let me know who she'd already come out to. And then a couple of weeks later, she said, Mom, actually, I don't think I'm bisexual. I think I'm pansexual. And I went, okay. And in my mind, I'm thinking, pansexual, I don't know what that is. Does that mean that you feel attracted or potentially could be in love with all creatures? and I was feeling a little bit embarrassed, and I said to her, please tell me, what does that mean, pansexual? I don't know what that means. And she said, well, Mom, I think basically it means that I'm going to be or that I am attracted to men, women, and people who don't identify as either one or the other, because I know that I'm going to fall in love with the person, not with their sexual identity. And so I was really relieved to learn that. And I said, oh, of course, that makes absolute sense. That is, that's the important thing, to feel love and to feel attraction and happiness towards whomever it is that, that does make you happy. And so since then, it's been a wonderful open journey with her dad, with her brother, who's almost 3 years older. And it's really helping me to learn and to see, different ideas about sexuality and identity and orientation. And it's wonderful to have her be so honest and open with us.
Some of you might recognize the voice.
I'm like, what?
And I have permission to say who it is. So that's Almendra Stafahili, who is a member of SIETAR Spain as well. And she's very, I think, excited to be able to share this moment with her own child, with her own daughter, as she goes through this discovery of her identity. So before we move on to the next part, I do have a little reflection for you all. Espe, could you pop up that next question? And the question is, how would your life be different if your sexual orientation or your gender identity were different than it is or than they are? And Espe, I don't know, do you think it's okay if we do just a couple minutes in breakout rooms to discuss that?
Sure.
Thank you. Welcome back. Would anyone like to share maybe a reflection or something interesting that happened in your breakout room?
I don't know. I think maybe the hardest part until we start talking is really, I mean, you're thinking from your perspective of your current life, and so if you switch and you still think you will feel the same, but because you don't really know. And we were saying that maybe if not only changing your sexual orientation, but changing city, or not living in Madrid, for example, living in a smaller town, you know, how you would feel about, you know, sharing the love of another with another person, you know, holding hands on the street. You would probably not do that in a smaller town. I don't know. It's complicated to know how you would feel, because you imagine yourself the way you are right now, but just loving someone else, and then you think I would be the same.
But I can share something that, I mean, I have a sister and she's a lesbian, so it's more or less the same. You know, in that case, I can put myself into her shoes, and I've seen how different my life would be if I were also a lesbian, because I saw how when she came out, what happened within the family, how my parents reacted, and we are a very close family, and still you could see that it wasn't as easy as we think it could be. You know, I've seen that really near in my life. So, but you're right. I think also when you change your geographical, your city, or that makes the difference even more greater, I think.
Yeah.
In my case, at some point in my life, I wasn't sure about my sexuality, and I wasn't sure I wanted to share. I was attracted properly, like I didn't feel attracted to people. And I was having the conversation with my mom, and my mom was a church person, and I was concerned about if I had something wrong. So I was feeling also the pressure of my aunties, like, are you okay? Are you gonna have a boyfriend and all that? So I know for sure I would have had a different environment, and probably move, as Rocio said, to another place to restart and to feel free to discover myself.
It's a really interesting exercise just to change that perspective for a moment and say, how would my life be different if I were, you know, what I'm not? Just to try and see it, as you were saying, Espe, like from the other point of view, or someone else's point of view, to see, oh, would my life be easier? Would it be more complicated? Would it be maybe just completely different, and how? And that really helps us create empathy for others who are different from us. And that's what we're hoping to do, is to foster that in kids. So I'm sharing again. I don't know, do you see full screen now? Or does it look strange? Is it full screen?
Not really, no.
Not really.
No, but you can, I think, go down on the right side. Then you have the
arrows.
Arrows,
The arrows.
There we go. Alrighty.
Yeah.
So we were talking about it just now. What are some of those obstacles that we face in being more inclusive and in transmitting those more inclusive values with the people around us? And a few of them that we probably the people in this group are more aware of these things because we've done some work. Fear. There are quite a few fears: the fear of judgment, fear of what other people will think, the fear of our kids missing out on a normal life, assuming that normal means hetero, cisgender, fear of our kids being ostracized, oppressed, or in danger in some way, fear of not being good enough as a role model is another one. You know, oh, I must have done something wrong. That's part of the reason why a lot of parents don't actively and proactively try and be inclusive with their kids. Also our unconscious biases. You know, this being straight is normal, being LGBTQ is abnormal. It's easier, or it's safer, or it's just better to be straight. Some other thing, apathy. I mean, you know, having a child that is not part of the majority culture in any way, shape, or form requires a bit more effort on our part. A child, or just, you know, students, even working with students, and I think some of the people in this group, quite a few people in this group do. Working with students and learning about new gender identities, it's an effort. And sometimes we just feel apathetic about it. In fact, I'm curious, could you guys pop into the chat? I mean, everybody I think knows that L is lesbian and G is gay. What about BTQIA? And there are actually 2 Qs and 2 As. Do you guys want to pop in what all those letters mean?
What? I don't know if I have understood the question.
So what do the letters mean in LGBTQIA? What do the letters mean? So I can see bisexual, trans, queer. Good. There are 2 Qs. Does anybody know what the other Q is, by the way? There's queer and questioning. What about the A? There are 2 A's as well. I see that we have asexual, intersex. What's the second A? Does anybody know?
Oh.
Okay, great. What is intersexual? Let's get a volunteer from the audience to describe that or to explain. Who's up? I see volunteer. Anyone? Anyone? So from my current state of ignorance, I'm going to explain what intersexual is, which is when a person's body is not clearly defined in one gender or another. This often means that they have a combination of sexual organs from a male body and a female body. It could mean that one of those gender or one of those genitals is more developed than the other. It could mean that some of them have been removed. That happens sometimes especially in the past, when children were born with different gender identities, and the doctors would just choose one for them and try and remove the others or suppress them. So intersex people might later in life not identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth, and might feel more identified with something in the middle, like they're not clear. That might be, you know, non-binary could be one of those identities in intersex.
There's the athlete Semenya, for instance. I don't know if you know about her, that it's been polemic in terms of sport just because of her intersexuality, because they were saying that it wasn't kind of fair that she was competing, blah, 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 blah.
So it really does pose a lot of questions, because that, you know, that athlete has every right to compete. And we as a society have the responsibility of deciding or figuring out how to let that person compete without it being considered unfair, or without it being something that that person is not allowed to do. So apathy, something that we all deal with probably quite regularly. Resistance, we also might not want to have to deal with it if one of our kids were to come out, people that we know were to come out. Unawareness of our own privilege. And this is something that I think probably a lot of people in this group might know about, is privilege. And I do have a really quick just privilege check test here for cisgender straight privilege. So this may not apply to you. It may or may not apply. I think everybody can appreciate the answers though. What would you answer to these questions? I can go wherever I want, knowing that I will be harassed. I will not be harassed, beaten, or killed because of my gender identity or sexual orientation. Is that true for you? If so, you have privilege. I know that my basic civil rights will not be denied or outlawed because some people disapprove of my gender identity or sexual orientation. If you say yes, then you have privilege. Congratulations. I know that I will not be fired from a job nor denied a promotion based on my gender identity or sexual orientation. This is obviously different in different countries. We are fortunate enough in the countries that we live in, based on everybody I see here, to know that this is illegal, not so for everybody in other countries. I do not have to come out and explain to people that I'm straight or that I am cisgender, as they will most likely assume it. And people do not think that my gender identity or sexual orientation is a mental health problem, which is the case for people in certain places. So just our privilege is often something that keeps us from really being inclusive. So let's talk about some tools that we can use for naturalizing inclusive conversations with young people. Again, this can be any young people that we have in our lives. Some really interesting books exist nowadays, especially with younger kids. You can find these on Amazon. You can find these at your local bookshops, at small businesses. They can order them. Reading books to kids is a really great way to start a conversation. Giving books as gifts to kids is another really great way to start a conversation with them. And I believe there are people in this who have kids that are a little bit older, so the next one's probably going to be useful for them. Thanks to all of our streaming platforms, we now have so many different options that we can talk to our kids about. We have from, animated series for smaller kids to series that are even for older teens and even for adults. I mean, I don't know if you all have seen these on the streaming platforms, but they're also pretty open to kids and to adults and to teens. So just sitting down with the kids, saying, hey, sitting down with your teens and say, hey, have you seen this series? Let's watch it together. Or what did you think about this character? And maybe you could ask them about a character who is trans, or who is coming out, or who is comfortable in their non-cisgender identity or their non-straight orientation. There are other things that we can do besides just giving kids books or watching series with our young ones. It's often hardest to take that first step. So some ideas to how to take that first step might be to just tell our kids or people in our lives about our own diversity, how we are different. Open up to them about things that we're not always comfortable talking about and see what they have to say. Ask them if they have questions for us. And then it's easier for us to ask them questions like, so are there any kids in your class that you like? Instead of, so do you have a boyfriend or do you have a girlfriend? Are there any kids in your class that you like? You might also want to follow someone who's an influencer for the LGBTQ plus kids in your lives. There are plenty of out people on social media that you can follow and ask them about those people that might be references for kids. You could also tell having dinner, you could talk about a coworker or somebody that you know who is LGBTQ and talk about that person in their life. And this is a fun one for little kids. You could do an art project with kids about a historical figure in the LGBTQ plus movement. I think one of the most important things is that it's okay to make mistakes, because we all do. We're going to get it wrong before we get it right. And that's the way that we learn. So there's no such thing as a bad conversation starter for talking to kids. I think that being inclusive does not mean accepting people no matter what. It means bravely loving them simply because they are. It's not about being tolerant with our children for their differences. It's about loving them because of their differences. So I would love to, we've already had a lot of Q&A, but I'd love to open it up to some more Q&A. I'm gonna stop sharing so we can do this. So questions that we might have so far. And if not, I've got a reflection question or two, but we have a nice...
Sorry, it's not really a question, it's just an observation from everything and from the breakout room that we had earlier. I grew up in a very conservative environment, and I know if I come out as a lesbian, my parents would have been shocked and horrified. I know that, thinking about Espe's sister. But I also, living in Madrid, I just feel very, very privileged and happy that we're living in this time now. I was out shopping with my daughter, who will soon be 12, the other day, and we saw two women holding hands, and then we saw two men holding hands and kissing. And I said to her, that wasn't around when I was little. I never saw that. And we're so lucky that that kind of love is freely expressed now. And she just went, yeah, she was just like, yeah, whatever. She was, you know, it wasn't a big deal to her at all. You know, I think it's lovely.
Yeah, you are like, oh, this is great, and she's like, yeah, whatever, this, I see this every day. This is nothing special.
I have a
Yeah.
question, and it's
Yes.
my kid, my girl. I mean, I didn't know if I answered correctly, but of course they are in this age that they are playing, having girlfriends and boyfriends and whatever. And then she said one day to me that she was fed up having boyfriends because she doesn't really feel connected to them, and that she prefers to have a girlfriend. And she told me her name, and she was there playing girlfriends. And for me it was okay, but for the other mom was a little bit like, shall we do something? And I was like, why? And I don't know if I should have said something more to that mom, because when my girl told me, for me it was completely okay. So I took it very, very natural. It's just when the other mom gave me the feedback that I just realized the fact that she was kind of worried.
She was
And I'm
feeling
like, we're
uncomfortable.
never worried if it's straight. Why we should worry? But I don't know if I should have comment on her differently. What's your you know, your advice at this point? Because you know, moms, we're kind of creatures that can react so sensitive sometimes. That's, you know, I just wanted to know your perspective on that.
The first thing that that I recognize in myself as well is that we're very we're very good at shoulding all over ourselves. I love that expression. It works really well in English, which is I should have done this, or I should have done that. And it's not really, there is no right answer. So I think more than worrying about what we should do, we can ask ourselves, what do we want to do? So if that mother were to come up to you again and say the same thing, what would you want to say to her today?
Who cares? Really? That could be I mean, that was really what I was feeling. Is like, I just told her, yes, I know. And she was like waiting for some kind of feedback, more, you know, more intense. But, you know, I was just thinking about my 3-year-old boy crossing the street, not looking around. And for me, the comment was like, I'm so okay with that, that I just left the conversation on there and left. And then I thought, okay, maybe she was waiting for me to say something else.
Yeah, but it's, I think
didn't
it's
care.
okay. I mean, I think you did right. You already shared with her, you know, that nothing was wrong with that. And obviously she's feeling uncomfortable. So let her deal with that. I think, I mean, no, because that's, you will not be able to convince her about anything. It's her daughter, and it's her feeling uncomfortable. And you just shared that you're not uncomfortable. So these are the things that make kids realize that there's something bad about this, because they see their parents. You see your parents' face, or you realize they are having this conversation, and then you're like, oh, we did something wrong. This is bad. And so maybe, you know, avoiding these things. And I think you did right. At least that's my perspective. The other woman is feeling uncomfortable, and that's fine too.
What would be like the next step if what you want to say, you know, if it happens, the next time it happens, it's well, okay, you know, that's great. What would be even further what you would say? Like, how would you invite her to step into her uncomfortableness or her discomfort?
I mean, if that appears again, I would like to say, if instead of Lea would be Hermes, would you react the same, and why? You know, because I think if we want them to be who they are, they need to be able to have the boyfriend, girlfriend, or whoever they wants to play with, you know. And I honestly have the feeling that may happen again. That's why I was asking you the question. I think she could come to me again, because after a while I just have realized that she was really waiting for my answer, and I'm like, that she's gonna come back for sure. Yes. But I don't know if I should go deeper, because
Sorry, and what is wrong with telling, in case she came, just to say, you know, I have no problems, because I see it just, I know that they are playing and they have to discover, you know, like give her a simple explanation on why you don't see it wrong. Instead of telling her you shouldn't see, you just say, yeah, for me it's normal. I know that they are playing.
That's already what I told her. I mean, that was already my answer. When she said that, I said, yeah, I know. She explained me, you know. I just told her that for me it was okay, and I just left. You know, I didn't have more to say.
Maybe, you know, I think often people, when they're not sure about their opinion, or when they are a little uncomfortable with it they're feeling, they're looking for someone to help them understand what it is that they are feeling themselves. So maybe just asking her questions for her to answer herself would be another really interesting way of helping her discover what is going on for her. Oh, well, how do you feel about that? And just listening to what she has to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
probably I was trying to avoid the awkward moment Rocio was saying, of kids knowing that they have ears, you know. And I was like, if I'm giving too much attention to this conversation and they are around, they may feel wrong about what they were doing. And for me, it's very normal. So I didn't want to go deeper, because I was putting then too much attention on something we shouldn't put attention to. That was kind of my worries in that moment. But well, it's okay. Let's go for another question. I was just no, I don't want to monopolize the. But I mean, for me, it's important. It's important your feedback.
Who else has something to say about that question, or more questions? Because I think it's a very good starting point. And I think everybody on this call does speak Spanish, so if someone wants to ask a question in Spanish, I think we can allow that, and I'll translate for the recording. No? Okay, I've got a reflection question for us then. If we could do one thing differently in our own childhood, regarding our inclusiveness towards the LGBTQ community, what would that thing be? Because every one of us here grew up. We all have people in our lives who we may or may not have known that were LGBTQ, and we all had a way that we approached this. We all had behaviors that were either inclusive, or maybe unconsciously they were not so inclusive. So if we could do one thing differently, if we could change, if we could rewrite our own story, what one thing would we maybe want to focus on?
I would change the way I reacted when one of my friends came out to me. And surprisingly, I was not very supportive. Yes, I would change that, definitely.
It's really interesting, Rocío, because often the people with the largest homophobia are actually people from the collective, from the LGBTQ collective.
Yeah, it's our own fear about things. You're not sure yourself, and then someone comes and, I mean, you're dealing with your own, you know, with your own fears, and then someone comes who needs your support, but you're not ready to give that support because you're dealing with your own internal things. So I felt really bad about that situation, because we're really good friends. And then when I told her about me, she was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. You were such an ass. And, you know, and now you're telling me this. And I was like, yes, I'm telling you because I really regret it. I was not able to deal with this at the time you came out, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I was myself, you know, feeling I had fear about a lot of things at that time, and I was not, you know, able to, I was not the person to help you or to support you. So I would definitely change that. That was something that I feel really bad about.
So being more supportive of people when they are brave enough to come out.
Yeah.
Something. And really, when we talk about what we would do differently, it's what we're wishing for the future. So we're kind of wishing that for the kids that we talk to, and that's what this question is about. Well, what else would we? Who else wants to share?
I would
something?
ask more questions, because I had like 2 come outs, and the first one, for me was okay, but I just did as something, cool for you, fine. And then I went on because I thought it was normal, but I actually was a big thing. And I regret not asking more questions in regards to who is he, and tell me, and do you love him, or does he, you know, as if I had done the same thing with a girl telling me that she likes a boy. It was a boy telling me he likes another boy, and I said, oh, cool. That's it. And so maybe that's something, I think the line is very thin when it comes to accepting the others and ignoring or not acknowledging this big deal, because it's actually, it's not a matter of you like boys or you like girls. It's just you like somebody, you're attracted to somebody, and you're telling me that. So I would be just like, yeah, just a real girl, a real friend, just wanting to know more details.
Cool. So what you're kind of putting out into the universe is to ask naturally and ask more questions. That's what you want to transmit to the kids in your life, the young people. Anyone else want to share something that they would do differently that you wish for the young people in your life? Basically.
Open my mouth, I think. Yes, because I think at high school, I wasn't fully aware of someone being bullied because of it. And I think I could have done quite a lot more, and to be the example for the neutral people that they were not opening their mouth. Be more public, stopping bullies, for sure.
They say if we're not part, and this applies to everything, if we're not part of the solution, we're part of the problem. There's no such thing as neutrality. And it's actually the way that we change the minds of the people who are not inclusive is through the people who become more inclusive. So by becoming more inclusive ourselves, we're spreading it. It's a ripple effect. Thank you. All right, last chance. Anybody else want to say something that you hope for the world that you would have done differently and that you wish to put out into the universe? One thing that I think I would have done differently, one thing that I hope to put out to other people is by just really being open to owning our own truth and to sharing it with other people. You know, whatever our truth is, sharing it with others. And that's part of the reason why we're doing this today, is just sharing that truth and opening up to who we are and opening that up to the rest of people. So I would do that with other people, and I hope that other people will do that, especially with kids, because the kids need that role model, as you were saying, Tensul, they do need that role model. Okay, well, I want to thank all of you on behalf of SIETAR España for coming today to this webinar and Q&A session to celebrate Pride. And I hope that you all have a very fantastic rest of your week. Espe, anything else that we should say on behalf of SIETAR?
No, on behalf of SIETAR, we thank you, Brian, for giving us this talk. It was really interesting and down to earth, and I think we all go with a very pleasant feeling, just knowing that we can do something for the future.
Yes, we can always do something. So have those conversations. Start it off. Give the kids in your life a book and talk about it. Watch a Netflix series or something and talk about it. Share something. Share your own truth. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Evening.
It was a great pleasure meeting you.
Thank you, Rocío, for coming and sharing
Same.
your story.
Yes,
Sure. It
incredible.
was a real pleasure to be here with you all.
Thank you, Rocío.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.